Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make an authentic looking clay bead garland. A great way to warm up your living space and create visual interest is by incorporating natural materials, colors, and textures into your decor. You can find a variety of decor options on designer websites, but unfortunately, the prices are just not practical for most of us. Thankfully, we can achieve a designer look at an affordable price by creating authentic looking pieces with materials that are easily accessible and affordable. About 5 years ago, I was looking at images of bone beads and came across this image. I changed my mind about the bone beads, but used this as inspiration to make a garland using air-dry clay and warm, earthy colors. 5 years later, this is still one of my favorite DIYs. I love the aged look and feel it gives to my decor, so I decided to make a smaller version that I could wrap around the neck of a vase that I DIY'd. A few weeks ago, I showed you how to make your own faux stone vessels. I'll leave a link to that video in the description box below. So let's take a look at how I made the beads. I start by rolling the clay between my hands, similar to what you would do to make a round ball. I'm applying pressure around the outside edge of the ball. This is what gives me a saucer shape. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you experiment with it, you'll find out it's very easy to do. I use my fingers to flatten the edges a little bit and push down on a center. And I use just a little bit of water to smooth it out. Here's a great tip on how to add texture to your beads. I took a piece of dried scrap clay. I'm just going to break it up into small pieces using a roller. Cover the beads by rolling them gently through the particles and press them in gently with your fingers. This adds great texture to the beads and it really works out nicely if you want to add highlights when you're painting. I used a metal skewer to pierce the beads to make a hole large enough to fit the twine that I'm going to add to make the garland. To keep the hole a similar shape, I went through both sides and just wiggled it around a little bit to make it wider. Let the beads dry for a couple of days. Air dried clay turns white when it's completely dry. I used warm, earthy colors, incorporating some reddish tones similar to what you would find in the Grand Canyon. I apply the paint using paper towels, so I just cut them into small strips. You'll also want to keep a little bowl of water handy. I used 4 different colors to base coat the beads. Apply the color to the entire bead. You don't have to get every single nook and cranny because you'll be using other colors as well as chalk to add detail to the bead. Here are the other 3 colors that I used to base coat the beads. With a damp paper towel, I add a small amount of paint and tap most of it off. Using a gentle pouncing motion, I apply the color to the bead. To add authenticity and detail, I create several layers of color alternating between my base colors. After adding each color, I take a clean, wet paper towel and gently wipe back some of the color. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. Just experiment with wet and dry paper towels until you create a look that you're happy with. To get that authentic red clay look, I add some additional colors. After letting the paint dry completely, I add some chalk to blend the colors and really give the beads an aged, dirty look. I shave off some of the chalk to make it easier to apply. You can use a wet, clean paper towel to wipe back some of the color if needed. Using a chalk pastel, I added an additional rusty brown color to accentuate the reddish tone on some of the beads. I cut a piece of twine long enough to fit all of the beads and made a loop at one end. I thought it would be a good idea to put a knot in between each bead to decrease any damage by the beads rubbing together, but I gave the beads a light coat of matte clear spray, so I ended up not using the knots. I added a tassel to one end of the twine, so I wrapped the twine around my hand about 30 times or so. I cut another piece of twine about 8 inches long. Pull the end of your twine from the garland through the loop of the tassel. Pull the tassel up close to the last bead and make a knot. Cut the twine down the middle of the loop. Using the shorter piece of twine, I wrap it around near the top of the tassel and make a knot. I cover that knot by wrapping one of the strands of twine around the knot and gluing it into place. Trim the tassel so that all the strands are the same length. To conceal the second strand of twine that I used to wrap around the top of the tassel, I thread it to a yarn needle and hide it in the middle of the tassel. And here's a closer look at the finished garland. I'm happy with how it turned out, but the bad news is now I need to repaint the vase to incorporate some of the darker brown and reddish colors of the beads. I came across these beads on a designer website, so it inspired me to make another bead garland incorporating some different shapes. I used a needle tool to make some indentations into the clay. I also left some of these lines and indentations that naturally occurred in the clay, as well as making my own using that needle tool. This adds texture and gives me some crevices to add darker colors, creating dimension. I added some dried clay shavings to give it more texture. I made a variety of shapes, including some oblong and round pieces. I used multiple colors of chalk to give the beads that aged, dirty look, and I used black to get into those little crevices created by the needle tool. I used a fluffy makeup brush to blend the colors together. I arranged the beads, making sure to alternate colors and shapes, and strung them together with tassels at each end, just like I demonstrated earlier. And here's a look at the finished garland. Adding small, eye-catching pieces is a fun, easy way to personalize your home and create a cozy atmosphere. Bead garlands are the perfect accent for styling on a coffee table or shelves. You can drape them on a stack of books, a wooden bowl, or some other type of vessel. I hope this project inspired you to make your own clay beads.